Most people have handled thousands of pennies without ever thinking twice about them. They sit in pockets, jars, and cash drawers, often ignored and sometimes discarded. Yet among these ordinary coins, a few rare examples exist that quietly stand apart. One of them is the 1970 United States 1-cent coin. The penny in question was struck in 1970 at the Denver Mint, during a period when the U.S. Mint was producing coins at very high volumes to meet everyday demand. At first glance, the 1970 cent looks no different from countless other Lincoln pennies. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Nothing about its appearance suggests it would ever be discussed beyond loose change. But its importance lies not in what most people see, but in what collectors look for. To understand why this coin matters, it helps to look at the moment in which it was produced. The year 1970 marked the beginning of a new decade in the United States. The country was adjusting to economic pressure, rising metal costs, and changing production methods at the U.S. Mint. Pennies were still being struck in the traditional copper alloy of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition that would soon be phased out. As a result, 1970 pennies belonged to the final era of classic copper Lincoln cents. At the Denver Mint, production was focused on speed and efficiency. Coins were made in massive quantities and shipped directly into circulation. In total, more than 2.5 billion Lincoln cents were struck at Denver in 1970. With numbers that large, quality control was aimed at producing usable coins, not perfect ones. Minor imperfections were common, and most coins entered circulation immediately, where began almost at once. The obverse of the 1970 penny features Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design that had already been in use for more than 60 years. Lincoln faces right, with "In God We Trust" along the top edge. The word "Liberty" appears to the left, and the date, 1970, is shown to the right. Just below the date sits the small D mint mark, identifying Denver as the place of origin. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, which had replaced the earlier wheat design in 1959. The memorial is shown with clear architectural lines, and inside the central opening, a small seated statue of Lincoln is visible. Surrounding the design are the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. For most people, this reverse design is familiar and unremarkable, but collectors study the sharpness of the steps, columns, and lettering very closely. While nearly all 1970 pennies share these same design features, condition is where differences begin to appear. The majority of these coins were circulated heavily. Over time, their surfaces became dull, the details softened, and the original mint luster faded. However, a very small number of 1970 pennies avoided circulation entirely. Some were set aside shortly after striking, possibly saved from original bank rolls. Others may have been preserved by collectors who recognized unusually strong strikes or clean surfaces. These coins retained their original appearance, showing sharp detail and minimal contact marks. For copper coins, color is a major factor in evaluation. Newly struck copper pennies display a bright red surface, but this color naturally darkens over time. Most surviving examples are classified as brown or red-brown. Professional grading services evaluate coins using a numerical scale that measures wear, surface quality, strike sharpness, and overall appearance. Coins that have never circulated receive a mint state grade, with higher numbers indicating better preservation. The specific 1970 penny described here is one of those exceptional examples. It was struck with strong detail, showing crisp lettering and well-defined design elements on both sides. The surfaces are notably clean, with very few marks even under magnification. Most importantly, the coin retains its original red color across the entire surface, indicating it was protected from environmental damage for decades. When this penny was submitted for professional grading, it received one of the highest grades ever assigned to a 1970 Lincoln cent. This immediately placed it among the finest known examples of its kind. Collectors place high value on coins that represent the best available example of a common issue. While rarity often comes from low mintage numbers, it can also come from survival rates. In this case, rarity is defined by condition rather than production. The 1970 D penny is common in worn condition but extremely scarce at the highest grade levels. When the coin appeared at auction, it attracted serious attention from advanced collectors. These buyers understood that opportunities to acquire top-graded examples of widely collected coins are rare. The bidding reflected that understanding. Each bid represented not just the coin itself, but its position within the Lincoln cent series. For collectors assembling the finest possible sets, this coin filled a gap that could not easily be filled by another example. By the time the auction concluded, the final price surprised many observers outside the numismatic community. For those familiar with condition rarity, the result made sense. The coin was not valued for being a penny, but for being an exceptional survivor of a high-production year. The 1970 D 1-cent coin ultimately sold for $83,000. The next penny comes from a much more recent year, yet its story is just as unexpected. It is the 2000 United States 1-cent coin, a piece of change that circulated widely at the start of a new millennium. Millions of people use these pennies every day while entering the 21st century, unaware that a small number of them would later attract serious interest from collectors. The year 2000 carried symbolic weight across the country. It marked the transition into a new era, and the U.S. Mint produced enormous quantities of coins to support everyday commerce. Pennies from this year were struck at multiple facilities, including Philadelphia and Denver, and were released directly into circulation in large volumes. They were intended to be practical, durable, and easily replaceable. By this time, the Lincoln cent had already undergone a major change in composition. Unlike earlier copper pennies, the 2000 cent was made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating on the surface. This change, introduced in the early 1980s, allowed the mint to control production costs as copper prices increased. As a result, the weight, feel, and long-term aging of these pennies differed from older issues. The obverse of the 2000 penny features Abraham Lincoln's portrait, a design that had been refined over decades. The inscriptions, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty," appear alongside the date, maintaining continuity with earlier Lincoln cents. Depending on where it was struck, the coin may show a mint mark beneath the date, identifying its place of production. These small details help collectors separate ordinary examples from those with stronger strikes. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design was still in use in 2000, just a few years before it would be replaced. The memorial's columns, steps, and interior statue appear once again, framed by "United States of America, e pluribus unum," and 1 cent. Careful examination of the reverse often reveals differences in clarity and alignment that are not obvious during everyday use. Because the mint was producing pennies in such large numbers, the focus remained on efficiency. Coins were struck quickly and released without special attention to long-term preservation. Most 2000 pennies entered circulation immediately, where they experienced wear from handling, stacking, and environmental exposure. Over time, their surfaces lost sharpness, and the thin copper plating became vulnerable to damage. Even minor contact could permanently affect a coin's appearance. Despite this, a very small number of 2000 pennies survived in unusually high condition. Some were saved directly from original rolls, while others were preserved by collectors who noticed exceptional surface quality. These coins avoided the common problems seen on zinc cents, such as discoloration, plating issues, or contact marks. Their survival often came down to careful storage and limited handling. Condition plays a central role in how modern coins are evaluated. While many people assume older coins are more valuable, collectors often focus on how well a coin has survived rather than its age. For modern pennies, finding examples with flawless surfaces, full detail, and strong original luster can be surprisingly difficult. This makes top-grade modern cents far scarcer than production numbers suggest. Professional grading services examine these coins closely, assigning numerical grades that reflect preservation and strike quality. Coins that remain untouched by circulation receive mint state grades, with higher numbers reserved for those showing minimal imperfections. For zinc-based pennies, achieving the highest grades is especially challenging due to the softness of the metal and the thin copper coating. The specific 2000 penny described here stands out because of its exceptional quality. The details of Lincoln's portrait remain sharp, the lettering is complete and well-defined, and the surfaces show almost no marks even under magnification. The copper plating remains intact and evenly colored, indicating careful storage over many years. These qualities place the coin well above typical examples from the same year. When this coin was professionally evaluated, it received one of the highest grades ever recorded for a 2000 Lincoln cent. This placed it among a very small group of top-condition examples from that year. While millions were produced, only a limited number have reached this level of preservation. Collectors value these coins not because they are old, but because they represent the best surviving examples of a common issue. In modern coinage, rarity is often created by condition rather than low production numbers. The 2000 penny is easy to find in everyday condition, but extremely difficult to locate in near-perfect form. Interest in this coin grew as collectors recognized how few comparable examples existed. For those assembling high-grade Lincoln cent collections, this penny filled an important position. Its quality set it apart from the vast majority of coins struck during the same year. By the time its value was established, the result reflected the combination of scarcity, preservation, and collector demand. The figure was based on the coin standing among the finest known examples of its type, not on face value or metal content. The 2001 cent penny ultimately reached a coin value of $38,000. Now let's move on to another penny from the early 2000s, one that circulated quietly while the United States continued through a period of economic stability and technological growth. The 2004 United States 1-cent coin was produced at a time when cash transactions were still common, and pennies played a daily role in purchases, change, and accounting across the country. By 2004, the Lincoln cent had fully transitioned into its modern format. The coin was struck on a zinc core with a thin outer layer of copper, a composition introduced decades earlier to manage rising metal costs. This structure affected how the coins aged over time, making them more susceptible to surface damage than older solid copper cents. As a result, long-term preservation became increasingly difficult for coins that entered circulation. The obverse of the 2004 penny features the familiar right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln. His image appears centered and balanced, with "In God We Trust" positioned along the upper rim. The word "Liberty" is placed to the left of the portrait, while the date 2004 appears to the right. Beneath the date, some coins display a small mint mark that identifies the facility where the coin was struck, a detail that collectors use to study production differences. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design remained in use, continuing a tradition that had lasted since 1959. The memorial's columns and steps are clearly defined on well-struck examples, and within the center opening, the seated statue of Lincoln can be seen. Collectors often pay close attention to this area, as weakness in the strike or wear tends to show here first. During 2004, the U.S. Mint emphasized consistent output and efficiency. Pennies were produced in very large numbers and distributed rapidly through the banking system. Most examples entered circulation immediately and were exposed to repeated handling. Over time, this led to small dents, abrasions, and dulling of the copper surface, especially on high points of the design. Contact with other coins during storage and transport also contributed to surface marks that are common on circulated examples. Environmental exposure further affected many of these pennies. Changes in temperature, humidity, and air quality played a role in altering surface appearance, particularly for zinc-based coins. Even brief exposure to moisture could result in discoloration or weakening of the copper plating. These factors made truly clean examples increasingly difficult to find as the years passed. Despite these conditions, a limited number of 2004 pennies avoided circulation altogether. Some were saved from unopened rolls, while others were carefully stored by individuals who paid attention to strike quality and surface condition. These coins remained protected from moisture, friction, and environmental exposure that typically affect zinc-based cents. Their preservation often depended on controlled storage environments and minimal handling. Condition is the defining factor when evaluating modern pennies. While the date itself is common, finding examples with sharp detail, undisturbed copper plating, and clean surfaces is far more difficult than many people realize. Even slight flaws can lower a coin's grade significantly, reducing its appeal to advanced collectors. As grading standards have become more refined, expectations for top-quality examples have grown even stricter. Professional grading services evaluate modern cents using detailed standards. Examiners look for strike sharpness, surface preservation, luster, and overall balance. Coins that show no evidence of circulation receive mint state designations, but only a small fraction of those qualify for the highest numerical grades. For zinc-based pennies, maintaining flawless surfaces over time presents a particular challenge. The specific 2004 penny described here stands out due to its exceptional preservation. Lincoln's portrait remains sharply defined, the lettering is complete and evenly struck, and the surfaces show minimal contact marks even under close inspection. The copper plating is smooth and consistent, indicating the coin was carefully stored shortly after it was produced. These qualities separate it clearly from typical examples of the same year. When this coin was reviewed by professional graders, it received one of the highest grades ever assigned to a 2004 Lincoln cent. This classification placed it among a very small group of top-condition examples. Considering the millions of pennies produced that year, the number of coins surviving at this level is extremely limited. Collectors value such coins for their role within the broader Lincoln cent series. High-grade modern pennies highlight how survival rates can shape rarity over time. While worn examples of the 2004 penny are easy to find, those preserved in near-perfect condition are exceptionally scarce. This contrast plays a major role in determining long-term collector interest. As collectors compared top-grade examples from the early 2000s, this penny consistently ranked near the top. Its combination of clean surfaces, strong strike, and overall balance made it a key piece for those assembling advanced collections focused on condition rather than age. It also served as a benchmark for evaluating other modern Lincoln cents. Over time, the importance of this coin became widely recognized within the collecting community. Its standing was based not on novelty, but on measurable quality and scarcity at the highest levels of preservation. The 2004 1-cent penny ultimately reached a coin value of $33,000. In the last part of this series, the focus turns to a much more recent penny, one that many people still remember seeing in everyday use. The 2016 United States 1-cent coin was produced during a time when digital payments were increasing, yet physical coins continued to circulate widely across the country. Even in an era dominated by electronic transactions, pennies remained part of daily commerce, appearing in pockets, wallets, and coin rolls across the nation. By 2016, the Lincoln cent had already undergone several design changes compared to earlier decades. While the obverse still featured Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the reverse now displayed the Union Shield, a design introduced in 2010. This change marked a shift away from the long-running Lincoln Memorial reverse and symbolized unity and strength within the nation. The design was intended to represent the 13 original states joined in support of the federal government, adding historical significance to the modern penny. The obverse of the 2016 penny shows Lincoln facing right, with "In God We Trust" along the upper edge, Liberty to the left, and the date 2016 to the right. A mint mark may appear beneath the date, depending on the facility where the coin was produced. Collectors pay close attention to these small mint marks, as they can indicate production differences or subtle variations between coins struck at different mints. The Union Shield on the reverse consists of vertical stripes joined by a horizontal bar across the top. The inscription, 1 cent, is centered across the shield, while United States of America and E pluribus unum appear above. On well-struck examples, the lines of the shield are crisp, straight, and clearly defined, while weaker strikes may show blending, soft edges, or loss of detail in the stripes. The overall symmetry of the design is often studied carefully by collectors. Production of pennies in 2016 remained very high, with the U.S. Mint focused on efficiency and rapid distribution. Most coins were struck quickly and released directly into circulation. As with other modern cents, they were made with a zinc core and a thin outer layer of copper. This composition makes them lighter than the older solid copper pennies, but also more sensitive to surface damage, so even everyday handling can create scratches, plating wear, or minor discoloration. Despite widespread circulation, a limited number of 2016 pennies were preserved in exceptional condition. These coins show strong luster, clean surfaces, and sharply defined details. Many of these examples came from rolls saved shortly after production, while others were carefully protected by collectors who recognized the potential value in coins with minimal handling. The difference between ordinary circulation and careful preservation can be remarkable. What makes certain 2016 pennies particularly noteworthy is the presence of rare minting errors. Some examples display anomalies such as double design elements, off-center strikes, or irregularities in the copper plating. In some cases, the errors are so subtle that only close inspection under magnification reveals them, while others are more obvious to the naked eye. These unintentional mistakes make each coin a unique piece of numismatic history. Collectors pay close attention to these error pennies because they represent something beyond the standard circulation issues. A coin that combines an unusual error with excellent preservation can stand out even among millions of coins struck in the same year. Errors can vary from slight doubling of letters to misalignment of the shield, making each coin slightly different from another. Condition is critical in determining how collectors view these pennies. An error on a heavily worn coin may be interesting, but one that remains sharply detailed and shows no signs of circulation attracts far more attention. Luster, strike clarity, and surface smoothness all enhance the appeal of a preserved coin, especially in modern zinc-based cents where wear happens quickly. Even within recent production, survival in pristine condition is rare. Most 2016 pennies in circulation exhibit marks, nicks, and fading of the copper plating, making examples with untouched surfaces especially desirable. Coins that show both a rare error and high preservation are considered remarkable finds by collectors and numismatists alike. While most 2016 1-cent coins remain ordinary pieces of change, a few stand out because they survived with minimal handling or left the mint with noticeable minting irregularities. These coins demonstrate that even modern issues, often overlooked in daily life, can become highly interesting when specific factors align. They remind collectors that rarity is not only about age or mintage, but also about unique characteristics and careful preservation. The 2016 penny serves as a modern example of how condition and subtle errors can elevate a coin's significance. Observing such coins teaches collectors about the minting process, the importance of storage, and the ways in which minor differences can create long-term interest. Even in a year with millions of pennies struck, a handful of preserved, error-bearing examples can draw attention from serious collectors. Ultimately, the 2016 1-cent penny highlights that collectability is not determined solely by age. Attention to detail, a sharp eye for unusual features, and careful preservation can turn even the most recent coins into objects worth studying and appreciating. Thank you for joining us on this journey through some of the most interesting pennies in U.S. history. If you enjoyed learning about these coins and want to see more stories about rare finds and hidden value in everyday change, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications.